Welcome to the fifth part on indices. In this lesson we're going to be doing some worked examples, so hopefully by the end you should be able to use the four laws of indices and know which law to use and when. So let's start with a relatively straightforward example. Simplify y squared all raised to the power of 3 times y to the power of 4. So there's two laws we have to use. So the first step is to use the third law of indices by finding out what the resulting y is, and then we're going to use the first law of indices to find out what this would be. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the third law of indices, y squared all cubed. So we're going to multiply the indices, so that would be y to the power of 6. And then what we're left with is y6 times y to the power of 4. And we're going to use the first law of indices. So we're going to add these indices up, and we're left with y to the power of 10. Alright, example 2. Simplify ab all cubed times a squared. Okay, so the fourth law of indices states that we are going, because we've got two pronumerals in here that are being multiplied in the brackets and all of that has been raised to the power of 3, we're going to apply this power to each of these individual terms. So we'll do that first. So we're going to have a cubed b cubed, and then we're going to multiply by a squared. Now we've got a cubed and we've got a squared, so the two a bases, we're multiplying those two together. And because we're multiplying those two together, we're basically just using the first law of indices here. We're going to add these two up. So we're going to be left with a to the power of 5 times b to the power of 3. Okay, so third example. Simplify 2p all squared times p squared. So this is very similar to the last example. So let's see what we're doing. First of all, let's break it down. We've got 2p all squared. So we're going to use the fourth law of indices here. We're going to apply this 2 to each of these terms, and then we're going to multiply that by p squared. So let's do that first. We're going to have 2 squared times p squared, so that's going to be 4p squared. And we're going to multiply that by p squared. So we've got p squared times p squared, so that's going to be 2 plus 2, so that'll be 4p to the power of 4. Okay, so example 4, 2p all squared divided by p. So again, very similar to the last one. So we're going to again use the fourth law of indices to multiply throughout. So we're going to have 2 squared p squared. So that's going to be 4p squared. Sorry. So we're going to have a divider of p to the power of 1. So this is the second law of indices now. So p, and then we're going to have 2 minus 1, so that'll be 4p raised to the power of 1, which is just 4p. Okay, so getting a little bit more tricky now. Simplify x squared y to the power of 4, all divided by x y. Alright, so what we're going to do is we should recognise here that this x and y down here, they don't have an index each, but we know that that's x to the power of 1, y to the power of 1. So we can rewrite it like this. And now this whole fraction, that's the same thing as saying x squared divided by x to the power of 1 times y to the power of 4 divided by y to the power of 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these bases, so the x's first of all, we're going to do 2 minus 1 because these are dividing, so it's the second law of indices. And then we're going to multiply that with y, 4 take away 1, which is y to the power of 3. So what we're left with is x to the power of 1, y to the power of 3. Or simply x, y cubed. Okay, so a similar example to the last one. We've got 10 squared times 10 to the power of 4, all divided by 10 cubed. So we're going to use two laws here. We're first of all going to use the first law for the numerator, and then we're going to use the second law to divide the numerator and the denominator. So 10 squared times 10 to the power of 4 is 10 to the power of 6. So that'll be 10 to the power of 6 divided by 10 to the power of 3. So it's going to be the second law of indices this time, and we're going to be left with 10 to the power of 6 minus 3, which is 10 to the power of 3. Okay, and a trickier still example. Now we're combining different laws here. So what we've got is we've got 2b cubed times b. Now what we have is b is being multiplied throughout here, but remember this 2 is just a multiplying coefficient. So what we're basically doing is we're multiplying b to the power of 3, or 2b to the power of 3 with b to the power of 1 there. So what we're doing is b3 plus 1. So what we're left with is 2b to the power of 4. And we're still dividing that by b squared. And now what we're doing is we're using the second law of indices. 4, we're taking 2 away from that. So we're going to have 2b squared. Okay, so quite a lot of tricky examples there. It's really good for you to practice these and hone the skills again, so they become second nature. It takes a bit of practice, but I'm sure you'll get there.